Randy Wayne White, talk to me about how a catfish can take a man to a legendary career as an author.
Well, I could make some joke about catfish drugs, but I was a fishing guide for many years on Sanibel and Captiva. In my very first charter, I picked up clients here at South Seas on Captiva, and I was not a very good fisher person. In hindsight, I knew it even at the time I wasn't very good. Anyway, my first clients, the first fish they caught, first of all, on the way up here, I ran aground twice. This is bad. You have a fishing guy that runs aground twice. This ain't good.
Yeah, no.
But I caught, but anyway, so went out by Redfish Pass, which was just to the north of here. Beautiful place to fish. And my clients caught a catfish, little tiny catfish. And I'd done a lot of fishing, so I went to take the catfish off, a little one, and he kind of flipped, and he got me. You can still see the scar, my knuckle.
Okay.
And I thought I was going to cry. My whole arm went numb. And it was not a hugely successful trip after that. But I remained a fishing guide for almost 14 years, did more than 3,000 charters, and never got stung again. So I was probably wise and lucky to go into writing.
Randy, you were a New York Times best-selling author. Doc Ford is one of your characters. You've written a number of novels, crime, detective sort of stories.
Many probably, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you a story in just a second. But you're in your bio here, man, I don't know if there's anything you haven't done or any place you haven't been. Peru, rescuing refugees from Cuba.
Brought back 147 refugees from Ariel Harbor, Cuba in 1980. Yep, on a 55-foot boat.
So my question is, do you do these things as research for your stories, or does it go the other way around? Do these stories become fodder for your books?
Mostly the other way around. I wrote for Outside Magazine for many years, but Mariel and the boat lift had nothing to do with that. I love Cubans, and they are a magnificent people, brilliant and industrious, and I'm not going to go into politics, but the government there, it's not conducive to free thinking. Yes, they could. That's about as mildly as I can put it. But no, I went there to a Cuban-American friend of mine wanted to get his grandmother and his aunt, I actually say it aunt, but I probably aunt,
sure,
out of Cuba. Their family, the husband, the wife, the daughter, and the son, had been separated for 20 years. The husband, the son, flew to Florida just before Fidel took over, and Fidel closed the airports. That family was separated, not a word exchanged, for 20 years, 1959 to 1980. So, yeah, about 21 years. And so went to get them and ended up with 147 Cubans. And I'm still very involved with Cuba, the Freemasons. I'm a member of the Grand Logia de Cuba, and do a lot of stuff down there.
Now, as we were sitting down here at the restaurant that bears Doc Ford's name, one of three of them, you were mentioning that you're basically on deadline for another book. I mean, how far into Doc Ford's story are you, and how many more do you have cooking up there?
I'm working the 25th Doc Ford novel, and the title is Caribbean Rim. And I went to the Bahamas and did actual more research for this book. There are many Doc Ford stories and many characters, and coming up with ideas is not the problem. I wish I'd learned how to type. I'm a two-finger typist, and it's just maddening, Neil. I'm a bumbling goof who's been very lucky, and that's the truth.
You may be interested to know, or you probably already know, when I told my wife we were doing an interview with you, she went to our library in Burlington, which is just outside of Toronto, and she says the library has lots of your books, lots of your titles.
Steal them, please.
Well, they're all out. And there's a long waiting list for each one, so she wasn't even able to get one. They're in high demand.
Well, I hate to keep a Canadian waiting for anything. My gosh, we need to rectify this. But...
Well, I've got a copy right here. I'm bringing back. Thanks.
Now, one of the things that we picked up on right away when we were sitting having lunch here today, are there many students of Captiva and Sanibel history who are as well versed in that history as you are?
Hopefully a lot of people far more versed than I. I'm just a an amateur historian. I adore not just the natural history of this area, but the social history, which dates back, as I was saying earlier, 7,000 to 8,000 years. There are islands in this area that have been inhabited without pause for more than 6,000 years. Now that's incredible, and there are still remnants of what I think of as shell pyramids and courtyards, burial mounds, canals that I've spent a lot of time in Central and South America that to me are very similar to Tikal, the Maya in Guatemala, and other places, Chichen Itza in Mexico, and not unlike Machu Picchu in Peru in some ways, but they only had shells to build with. It really is a fascinating culture.
Well, Randy, if you ever want to make your way up to Toronto and write a couple of novels about, well, Neil Headley's story or something along those lines.
You're good-looking guys.
It'd be a pleasure to have you up there and do a little history in our own, perhaps.
Well, Norm, thanks very much. I'd like to get up there. I like people from Canada. A lot of my clients were from Canada, and I used to have a T-shirt that said, "No walleye stories, please."
I love it.